The Tokugawa shogunate had a unique social structure that ended up affecting everything from the political system to the economic stability to the success as a nation and more. The social structure was a six-class system. It went down from the emperor to the shogun to the daimyo to the samurai to the peasants and then to the merchants. The emperor was really a figurehead. He had no influence or power, but was mostly seen as a religious ruler and a political symbol. The shogun was the real ruling class. They had the biggest source of power and overall controlled everything. Basically, the daimyo set them up as shoguns, and the shoguns continued to have a hereditary line of ruling, founding a dynasty. Whenever there was any sort of political distress, the daimyo would institute a new shogun, and the daimyo would only answer to that shogun. The shogun was the biggest power in the nation. The daimyo were next. They served as regional rulers and vassals that the shogunate responded to. They were the lords of the land and had large amounts of influence. They owned a lot of land in which peasants and farmers made a lot of agricultural products, and they had large armies of samurais. The samurais were the next class, and they were powerful military leaders that's role shifted when there was a lot of peace and no real war. For more information, see Maya's video. The shogunate was unique in the fact that the peasants were actually higher on the social scale than the merchants. The peasant class was the agricultural base of society, and they worked off the land. They got second standing for three key reasons: productivity, agriculture, and just being plain better than the shogunate. So first of all, Confucian society emphasized productive people. It was said that in order to be successful, you had to earn your methodology to that place. Basically, the fundamental values of the nation aligned perfectly with the fundamental values of working the land, aka the peasants. Also, merchants were seen as super shady because they benefited off of somebody else's profit. Secondly, they were important because of agriculture. They produced critical raw material that sustained the population, which was seen as necessary. Also, the shogunate liked the idea of an agricultural-based society, thereby playing into why the peasants were important. And finally, they contributed to the nobles financially. Nobles weren't allowed to participate in the market, so the wealth that they got was primarily consistent of generous tax breaks off of the profit produced by the peasants. Whenever the peasants would have a large section of crop, the nobles would actually profit from that. Basically, they had the nobles' favor and worked directly with them, which meant that they were higher up in society. Also, the nobles hated the merchants because they couldn't benefit off of the merchants economically. Basically, they were higher than the merchants because the merchants were really bad and not really of much else. So the merchant class was at the bottom of society, but despite that, still played a critical role in maintaining stability. The merchants were at the bottom for a couple of reasons. First of all, they were seen as shady. They benefited off of other people's labor, even though that was exactly what the nobles were doing with the tax cuts of the peasants' production. The nobles couldn't benefit from the merchants financially, and the nobles were ostracized as parasites due to their conflicting values. They even lived in separate houses. The merchants, however, had a huge increase in greater stability. First, thriving commerce. There was a hungry economy that only the merchants could solve, which meant that overall they meant that multiple people were able to benefit economically from their overall commercial actions. They kept the economic stability at a clear level, which overall meant that they prevented any threats to political stability. Secondly, they were necessary. All goods that couldn't be grown off the land were grown through merchants, obtained through merchants. They kept stability by making sure that people had things like soap and clothes, which are kind of necessary. Finally, they supported everyone within the society. Because trade was closed off on the international front, all trade was regional, meaning that local leaders and producers were uplifted by a thriving merchant class and therefore a thriving population as a whole. The Tokugawa shogunate was a complex system with a lot of internal conflict. However, the general peace, economic and political stability, and the successful methodology by which the people used this class system led to a mostly positive and stable era.